We all have been dealing with a lot since the pandemic has started. Indian healthcare workers are trying their best to control the situation. National Institute of Disaster Management encourages you to take the preventive measures against the coronavirus. Always wear a mask and sanitize your hands frequently. Also follow all the protocols of social distancing. Get yourself vaccinated from your nearest vaccination center. Until then, stay home and stay safe.
So, very good afternoon to all the panelists and the participants. I am Anil Kathar, Junior Consultant, Center for Hill Area Development, GMR Division and IDM. And on behalf of National Institute of Disaster Management and Indian Institute of Technology, Mandi, I welcome you all to the third and last day of this 3 days online training program on comprehensive landslide risk management. Today, there will be a technical session followed by a validity session. And in technical session, we will be joined by Dr. Ratnakar Mahajan from McAfee, India, and Dr. Varun Dutt, Associate Professor from IIT Mandi. And for validity session, we have Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division NITM, and Dr. K.V. Uday, Assistant Professor IIT Mandi. So before proceeding to the technical session, I request participants for their active participation in the technical session. They can post their queries in either in chat box or you can use a Q&A box for your queries. And after each presentation, we will be taking your queries to the respective panelists. So for the first lecture, I pass on the mic to Dr. Ratnakar R. Mahajan. Dr. Mahajan is working as a technical head at McAfee. He has worked as engineer providing design and drawing services to McAfee, South Africa and India subsidiary, which involves conceptualization of solution and detailed technical and hydraulics sector. He has key experience in the field of soil reinforcement, geotechnical modeling, instrumentation, pseudostatic earthquake analysis, ground improvement, and retaining structures, slope stability, river training channels, lining, and rockfall protection. Presently, he represents Asia at McAfee Innovation Center and frames training needs for employees. And Dr. Ratnakar possesses diversified experience in various civil engineer fields and associated with a number of prestigious projects in India and abroad. And he has worked as a consultant for hydroelectric projects at Indonesia. And also he has contributed to various codal guidelines such as IRC 89, 3456, and so on. And he will be enlightening us on case studies on landslides and mitigation strategies. So with this, sir, floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Kathir, and thanks to IIT Mandi as well as all the audience for giving this opportunity, for sharing the information what we have learned through some projects. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you, sir. And I hope you are able to see my screen as well.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So today I'm going to talk basically on landslides, and in the first part, I will be talking on the approach, how these landslides to be approached, or what are the strategies to be adopted, and followed by a case history. So, so I have 30 minutes, right, Professor? So I will try to limit myself in that time.
Yes, sir. 30 minutes, and after that, 10 minutes of Q&A session.
Q&A session. So, so McAfee started its operation in 1998 in India. Before that, of course, McAfee started their operations around 140 years back worldwide, and being specialized in various civil engineering solutions. So, landslides during these 2 days, what you must have gone through different types of landslides, reasons of that and other things. But still, I will just touch upon some brief basics like, landslides could be various types. There could be number of issues in that. For example, some erosion at the toe of the hill, either because of natural stream or could be just by drying a wetting cycle, you lose some soil, and there could be instabilities of the slopes. There could be a mix of groundwater, seepage also inside, it can trigger it further. Or if you have the slope such that it actually is very steep, and you may have a mix of soil boulder mix, or even if it's pure rock, so it could be a mix of rockfall and landslide or debris flow of the problems. So it's typically a movement of your mass or a slope mass, towards downward, which is basically could be slow to rapid in velocity, I would say, and it can bring any kind of material in that, like rock, soil, or other combinations. So as I explained, I will not go much in detail because this already must be covered in the last 2 days. But very important part, like around 22 states, and 2 union territories are affected by landslides. So it's one of the major hazard which is being present all over, and usually it gets triggered by, I would say, a mix of different natural factors like rainfall, seismicity, wetting and drying, and other seismic factors. Depending on the type of material you have, the type of geometry is there. There could be different types. There could be a flow of material, be a toppling of rock mass. It could be a completely a slump, or due to creep movement of the soil, or the complete structure itself is creeping over a period of time, or there are some overhangs which can have fall over a period of time. Typical landslide in the Himalayan region, as well as from one of the project site. I would like to just play this. So one landslide is basically from project one from the. So you must have in previous videos, now you have all kinds of material in this, and cannot say pure rockfall or something, but it's a landslide with number of things getting mixed together. So of course, when we are approaching the landslide, we have to approach with investigation of for various factors which are really triggering this instability. So there it could be the natural factors or anthropogenic activities like improper land use or deforestation. So like the factors could be like seismicity, precipitation, if it is like at high altitude, so probably a melting of snow, or could be volcanic eruption, the type of structure, the slope, hydrological, geological conditions, and geotechnical parameters of the material. So we can relate these landslides to the hazard actually, and then we can come up with this landslide mitigation. For example, if you have a event or a landslide which can occur frequently, but have let's say minor injuries, so we may not be there worrying that much, or let's say it's like a very minor injury, but it's remote or improbable possibility of happening. So we may not, or let's say we can categorize it as a low risk area. Whereas if it is a catastrophic hazard, like where it can happen frequently, could be very high risk. So a person who is trying to attempt to mitigate this will first try to mitigate before mitigation, try to understand what is the risk associated with that landslide, what exactly is going to affect, and how much it is important, because the protection of the structures nearby or landslide stabilization is a cost, and that cost will be governed by also the amount of risk you want to mitigate. And even sometimes even the landslide will be so big, is it really possible to mitigate? That's also is a question mark, typically in the Himalayan region. Now, what are the different types of interventions that can be thought of for this landslide? First, very simple could be avoiding or eliminating the problem, the simplest. So if you have something in that area, completely relocate it or remove the slide, or go for a tunnels where you will not have these landslide getting affecting your any operations. Could be railway line, could be road, could be hydroelectric power plant, could be your town itself. So if it's town, then definitely you will need to protect it. But if some facility you can relocate, do that. The second could be increase the resisting force. So there are some driving forces for these kind of events. So try to increase the resisting force. Could be in the form of buttressing or providing some retaining structures. Could be rigid, flexible, or a surface protection. Other way around could be if you try to reduce the driving forces. So the driving forces which are causing these instabilities, if you try to reduce them, that could be another option, like unloading, like removal of some soil mass or improving the drainage pattern. So when we talk of retaining structures, today I'm going to specifically talk on flexible retaining structures that are basically can tolerate some movements without losing their integrity. So we typically refer reinforced soil structures like you have terra mesh and green terra mesh system, basically made up of double twist wire mesh. Typically in terra mesh is basically a gabion fascia with a soil reinforcement. And because of the porosity, high porosity of this gabion fascia, you have good draining structure, as well as because of the mesh, they are basically flexible structures. You can use these gabions for mass gravity or retaining structures. So examples like these are the photographs from the state of Maharashtra, Sahara, Ambi Valley, Lake City, where basically lateritic soil is being present and which loses strength when it becomes wet. So you must have read in newspapers now, typically in the western part of the country, as well as Konkan area also, there is a lot of landslips happening. So that area you have a lot of laterites being present, which typically lose their strength when they get wet. So one of the project, this problem was being faced by Sahara Ambe Valley, which was treated by gabions effectively. When we have to increase the forces, the option could be of soil nailing, rock bolting, you say, or micropiles or anchors. So you can combine these different options of soil nailing or micropiling anchors with maybe with flexible gabion fascia or flexible synthetic mats or flexible reinforced synthetic mats to increase the resisting forces. Or you can have even some simple way of doing is like you might have heard from local people if you visit landslides typically in hilly areas that local people will say earlier there was a lot of greenery, but since the greenery is gone, there are issues of landslip. So if you are able to establish vegetation, that also takes care of a lot of things. Of course, if you take care of the percolation of water, also it solves major one of the issue of seepage of water. So here you can do a surface slope protection with the help of shotcrete, could be with stone pitching, could be with gabion matrices or vegetation. It's a lot of options can be there. When we look for the vegetation growth, it could be done by biodegradable mats like jute or coir, or synthetic mats made up of polypropylene, or synthetic mats of reinforced with a steel wire mesh. Of course, the advantage of each of these different products is like this is a biodegradable mat. It degrades and provides manure for even the vegetation growth and easily available in India. Of course, this can be used for relatively flat slopes. These typically where you are expecting delay in vegetation growth, these synthetic mats are good. And when you are going forward very steep slopes like around 75 degrees, 60 degrees, 65 degrees, you can go for reinforced mats. So let's say 45 degree and above, you can go for this. This mats purpose is not to control the complete movement of mass movement, but it's like vegetation growth to be ensured. Then apart from mats, there are a lot of other solutions like you call it as hydro seeding or hydraulically applied erosion control measures. In this, basically, water is mixed with the seeds of grass, what you want to grow on the slope. Along with that, you add the basically moisture retention pack of polymers. You add the manure. You add certain, you can say the fertilizers depending on the type of soil. So here the most important part is study the soil, not from soil mechanics or geological point of view, but study from agronomic point of view, understand how much organic matter is present, how much is the acidity or alkalinity, what kind of deficiencies are there in the soil which are required for soil vegetation growth, vegetation growth. So there you can add this and spray this over a slope, and then you get a very good vegetation over a period of time. Of course, you need to maintain this area till you get a good vegetation. Of course, when we talk of these landslide, there are issues of rockfall. So these issues of rockfall can be solved by a number of ways. The simplest way would be, you put a mesh on top of this slope where you are finding the small boulders or shooting rocks are coming. You might have noticed, before any big events, you will find small portions of rocks coming down, giving a hint there could be possible movements, and then further down a big masses starts coming down, which can be a mix of rockfall event and landslide together. So where you put a mesh on the slope and anchor it at the top, this is feasible for limited height, limited area to be covered. In case you have space at bottom, you can leave this mesh open. If space is not available, you provide some additional anchors at bottom. So whatever rock mass gets deposited in this mesh gets accumulated at the toe of the slope, and with the anchors it's being contained, and later on you can remove. In case you want to even do surfacial stability of the slope, you can add anchors across the length and height of the slope. So this is a very good solution for the containing rockfall, but only thing is this is very expensive as it will be covered by a lot of mesh. Alternatively, you can put a barrier. So on the slope itself, you put a dynamic rockfall barrier which has a steel post and a steel mesh which can catch the falling rocks. But this has limitation of energy, typically 100 kilojoules to 1000 kilojoules, 10,000 kilojoule energy can be easily mitigated. In case you have a lot of space at bottom, you can provide embankments in the form of gabion walls, reinforced soil structures, earth embankments. This will be a good option which can basically sustain very high energy. And for debris flow barrier, like rockfall barrier, you have debris flow barrier. Again, here you have a mesh which is installed in the the natural streams which carries the lot of debris during the monsoons. And then reducing the driving forces. So where it's possible, reduce the driving force by unloading the mass, but it's not really feasible most of the cases. But if it is possible, need to be seen. And then important is very important is the drainage. This is most important part. So study the site, understand from where the water moves, how it moves, and if you are able to remove the water from the site as early as possible, you are minimizing the seepage of water inside the slopes, and the possibilities of further mass movements gets reduced. So there are different types of drains like gabion drains, cascade drains, ditches, stow drains, different types of drains to be put in. Then after understanding what are the different interventions which can be done, a very important part is a design planning, which is very critical for successful project. So where you need to decide the type of investigation, survey, study to be done. Just to give an example, you have a landslide, let's say 200-meter high slope, and if you ask the investigation guy to go on the top of it where it's not accessible and do a soil exploration like a geotechnical investigation with the help of bore logs, it's not feasible. So in such situation, you need to really mix the different types of investigations like geological investigation, geotechnical investigation, and geophysical, basically mix together and then decide. Visualize the different ground conditions, collect the data and correlate with the site details so that you understand what is being reported in what sense it is being reported, and corroborate with the site conditions. Understand what would be the different stages of construction and how exactly you are going to execute the work. Use of local material must be given preference here, because you cannot bring a lot of material in such fragile terrains. Prepare a detailed drainage plan. Whatever work you are going to do, whatever excavation material you get, excavated material, how you are going to handle it, that needs to be taken care of. Here, cutting and cut and fill should be balanced such a way that you manage the work then there itself. And the importance of safety issues like geometry of road, or maybe other facilities, that constraint which are unavoidable, that needs to be understood. For example, you are working on a road which cannot be closed because there are a lot of facilities, or maybe a railway line which cannot be stopped, or maybe a power plant which cannot be. So how you are going to tackle this, that needs to be taken care of. After design planning, most important part again is the construction planning. Like, what are the sequence of activities? Are you going to do excavation top, bottom, or bottom up? So this to be, which will govern the type of machinery you will require, whether closure or complete stop up the work, or the activities in that area. How you are going to handle these things during monsoon, pre-monsoon, post-monsoon, that needs to be worked upon. And then most important is the cash flow. The contractor working on site must have a proper cash flow during the project, so that has to be ensured in the construction planning and design planning. You cannot have a bad cash flow for a contractor, otherwise he will not be able to execute the work. So when we look at these landslide, you have various issues of possibilities of rockfall, possibilities of the instability of slopes, which to be stabilized with soil nails, rock bolts. You can have embankments if you have space to contain the falling rocks. You may need to provide retention structure, flexible retention structures, and drainage. Overall drainage of the site will be taken care of. So I am presenting one case study. Basically, this is a landslide mitigation measures in Uttarakhand. This was basically a part of rehabilitation of the sites, basically after 2013 floods. There were actually 7 different sites in 2 packages. So due to time limitation, I will not be able to cover all of them. Only 1 or 2 I will be covering. So here, like 7 different landslides, like Nanprayag, Maithana, Birai, Gulabkoti, Helan, Govindghat 2 and 3. They are where is the project. So why these were important is, like, Uttarakhand is a land of gods, where the beauty attracts a lot of people for tourism, for pilgrimage, and the most important is the hubs for religious travel, like Chota Char Dham, as well as people visiting Badrinath. So that becomes a very important aspect to be taken care of. So if you see a data of people traveling since 1990 to, let's say, 2018, 2013 till 2013, there was a rise in the people visiting Uttarakhand. But after the Uttarakhand tragedy, there was a dip, and then again it started going up. So because you have this Char Dham Yatra, and a lot of devotees specifically visit these areas. So 2013, I need not to mention, everybody knows, that was one of the big disaster which happened, and a lot of people lost their lives, and very tough stories. So this is basically on NH 58, basically covering the different landslides starting from Nanprayag to Govindghat 3. So in this project, the requirement was geometrical improvement of the road and widening of existing 2-lane road, which will be safe. And the challenge for this project was to keep this road functional during the construction. So you cannot stop the road for the yatra. So that's very important. And as you must notice, I will just take you to the previous slide. You will notice in this slide, the video shows the uphill side of the side, very, very steep. and mix of soil, basically sand and gravel, boulders, and this is the small road, very small, that need to be widened up. So this is Helang is a village in Joshimat Tehsil. The location consists of rock mass having unfavorable dipping towards valley side, and of course MCT passes from this area which is vulnerable. So at the beginning, the site visits being done and try to understand what could be the probable issues. So it's like there were some blocked drainages on the hillside. There were some handmade wire crate walls which were getting settled on valley side. And of course, over a period of years, there which have been different floods as well as the cloud burst and the valley sides found to be sinking, and of course the rock mass having the dippings towards the roadside, which is unfavorable, and very important part of the erosion of the toe of the slope near the river area, which could be get washed due to the flashy Himalayan rivers. So here approximately you can say 40 meter on hillside and valley side around 80 meter need to be protected. So first site visit, collecting the site observations, then the boreholes were planned, and as I explained, in such situation you cannot go up and do the investigation. So mix of geotechnical investigation or geophysical like seismic refraction tests were conducted, and then whatever details have been collected, they were corroborated, and then finally conducting a total station survey. So typical observations were made, like what are the type of slope, what kind of things are located on the slope, collecting the information from the site, from pictorial as well as from sketches, then understanding the type of rock, like here it was like central crystalline rock having the basically the formation with quartzites, and these are basically extremely deformed or ductile, different types of monolites and schist and amphibolites. So the geotechnical investigation and SRT got some results like I will show you in the site. So here in the photographs, what you see is the SRT in progress, and this is what finally we got after the SRT, and bore logs were also mapped in that study to decide basically type of soil profile it has. This is like the geotechnical investigation being carried out, where what is the overburden, what the type of rock, like moderately strong quartz or mica schist with core recovery, RMR, all these things were noted, and they were corroborated with even the SRT data. So after understanding this, the design and planning part, as this site falls in a seismic zone 5, so the selection of the retention system which will be required will need to be flexible. Here around 12-meter wide road was proposed, which very existing road was very thin, so we need to construct this structure, I would say road. So the option typically is going on the hillside, you cut and construct, but here a different approach was adopted. Instead of going on hillside, we went on valley side and constructed retaining structure, because if you go on hillside and cut, it's going to disturb the video of the slide. So you can see on the hillside you have the solutions of steel wire mesh. On the valley side, retention is going on. So you will see here least touching on the hillside. That's the approach that is being followed. So this is the top view of a Helang location. So this is the hillside. Valley side, you can see here a lot of past movements creating the debris being there. The solutions adopted from toe. So I will go from toe. So at toe, a riverside protection in the form of launching apron and gabion walls, In between, there were small retaining structures being constructed. And then here, retaining structure in the form of reinforced soil structure with stone fascia and green fascia. And on hillside, you have a simple drapery system where a mesh is being put, and a debris flow barrier in the form of a small rockfall barrier was being put. As we discussed, drainage was given a proper attention. So a proper drainage plan was being prepared with valley side and hillside. So this is basically a valley. This is the hillside. The rainwater, then putting it through cascades, collecting it along the tow drain, and taking this tow drain to the existing culverts, and from there taking the water to the river. That's to the valley side. Then, of course, for the hillside, when this protection of the slope was there, a drapery system was thought of. So here, the purpose of the drapery system was to contain the rocks in the mesh, and it doesn't come on the road directly, but it will be contained inside the mesh itself. A barrier was being put. The purpose of the barrier is a dual function rockfall barrier as well as debris flow barrier, because there was a nala which was being reported. It can carry some debris during the monsoon period. And this is the cross section of a retaining structure on valley side. So here you have a tow gabion walls for the hillside. You have, this is the road, and then you have the slope with a steep wall here, and then this is on valley side. You will see a solution provided for erosion control measures. The purpose here is to grow vegetation so that erosion shall not happen. The purpose of this retaining structure is to provide a platform for the road, and the tow wall is provided to provide the tow stability. This is the section for river side where launching apron of mattresses and gabions were being put. On these mattresses, large boulders were being put. The purpose of providing these large boulders was, this is a Himalayan rivers carrying lot of bed load, which can damage these apron very easily. So first, the first line of defense would be the large, big size boulders, followed by these mattresses. So the debris flow, what we discussed, was basically at the slope of 45 to 60 degrees, which makes difficult to construct with the help of masonry or PCC or RCC. So, here basically the natural drains were constructed simply with the help of understanding the details and manually. Here, reinforced soil structures were being put in valley side, and as we discussed, river side protection with the gabions and flexible mattresses. The designs were carried out for reinforced soil structures as per BS 8006, considering the seismicity as per IS 1893, and meeting all the stability requirements of global stability, sliding and bearing capacity, and internal stability. So this is what photograph shown before, where the mix of three studies together, like geological study, geotechnical investigation, and geophysical, and then finally we are arriving at magic number. So typically the question comes, what are the properties we need to consider for the analysis were arrived after combination of all these data together. And then a design for even drapery system was carried out. For the design of rockfall barrier, the slope geometry was captured from total station survey from contours that was modeled in the rockfall software of rock science, and then probable trajectories of the falling rocks was being simulated, and then accordingly the barrier capacity was being chosen. So this is the photograph of a launching apron that's being constructed at the river side, valley side, and on this apron, very big size boulders were being put in there. So whenever you have very large amount of debris being carried out, it could be wooden logs or rocks. They will not damage these matters, but these boulders will take care of these protection. This is the road construction on valley side, where the reinforced soil structure here you can see is during construction, and after construction you can see this is the stone fascia of terra mesh, is a green fascia of green terra mesh. Then you have road, on the valley side, erosion control measures being provided here, and you can see greenery getting established, which will take care of surface erosion. A very important part, as we discussed, is the surface and subsurface drainage. We have seen the surface drainage in previous slide. For subsurface drainage, chimney drain, or you can say a gravel drain, was practiced, which was wrapped in a geotextile behind these reinforced soil structures. So any kind of seepage coming, this chimney drain will discharge this water easily out, rather than creating a poor water pressure in the retaining structures. So this was the condition of the road, before starting the construction. This is what a finished wall as well as the road structures looks like. These are the photographs of erosion control measures which were adopted is this site. So mesh and the erosion control mats combined with the hydroseeding. So the effect of this, you can see quite visible effect between during construction and post construction, and this is the rockfall barrier with a dual function. This is the meshes put on the hillside, mix of rope panels, steel rope, wire rope panels, and the mesh. And the visual showing the barrier would act as a dual function of rockfall as well as debris flow. So in a summary, I would say, you need to think completely 360-degree for landslide from top to toe. That's very important. Drainage is very, very critical, and it's very challenging in these conditions. But if my understanding, if you take care of drainage, surface and subsurface, typically surface, you solve major issues. Providing the structures take care of the site where it's located. If it is highly seismic and moving, go for flexible. Instrumentation is very important. Of course, due to time limit, I didn't cover the instrumentation. But I have a video, if we get time, it's a 3-minute video, which will cover all these things what I explained in brief. River training, if you are dealing of a landslide where you have the rivers moving, use of local material. In this complete project, we use the local material, nothing being brought from outside. Taken care of employment of local people and reduction of carbon footprint. We didn't wait for solutions like RCC structure or other kinds which have higher carbon emission than what we have offered. So way forward is, let's look at this landslide from all aspects. Very important, do the investigation from geological, geotechnical, geophysical point of view, and then drainage. Go for instrumentation, and then you can really do this landslide mitigation. Thank you very much. So Professor, I think I have taken 4 more minutes. Sorry for that.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insightful presentation, sharing your on-field experience regarding the landslide issues and the probable remedial measures to fix them. Sir, we will take a few questions. So this question is from Anish Kumar Soni, and he wants to know, sir, how can we make use of RMR and Q systems in mitigating landslides?
Okay, so basically, if I understand, it's basically rock mass classification related question, right?
Yes,
it's
RMR, rock mass.
So basically, when we are doing the soil investigation for landslides, so it will depend on the site, whether you have a kind of, I would say, relatively homogeneous material or it's heterogeneous. Like if we talk of western part of the country or southern part of the country, you may have little homogeneity, whereas you go to northern part in Himalayas, you will have a lot of heterogeneity. So where you will have to really use these details together sensibly to classify the rock and try to understand to arrive at the parameters which are sensible, not only just by geotechnical investigation, but related with geophysical and geological. That's more important. So it's all things together. Then you will get a proper idea.
Thank you very much, sir. That was the only question.
Okay, great. So if we have a couple of minutes, can we play video or I don't know what's the. Thank you.
Sir, Thank you very much for joining us and sharing the work done by your organization in the field of disaster management in the country. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So now moving to the second presentation, for which I welcome Dr. Varun Dutt. He works as an associate professor in the School of Computing and Electrical Engineering and School of Humanities and Social Science at Indian Institute of Technology, Mandi. And Dr. Dutt has applied his knowledge and skills in the field of psychology, public policies, and computer science to explore how humans make decisions on social, managerial, and environmental issues. And Dr. Dutt's PhD thesis focused on answering the questions, why do we want to defer actions on climate change? And he has investigated the question by applying literature on people's risk preferences, time preferences, and social culture dilemmas and linear thinkings. And Dr. Dutt has used lab-based methods involving experiments with human participants and various model research questions. And sir will be talking about low-cost IoT-based landslide monitoring and prediction and early warning. So with these words, I pass on the mic to Dr. Dutt. Over to you, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. And yes, sir, yes, sir, we can hear you. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity and thank you for introducing me. So I guess you can still see my slide. I just converted to a presenter mode.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Your slide up in slide mode.
Thank you again. Thank you for this confirmation. So I'll be talking to you about slow movement prediction and early warnings via machine learning algorithms and IoT technologies. This is a presentation and work which I've been working with my colleague here in the call, Dr. K.V. Uday. So Dr. Uday is from the soil and the civil side, and I'm from the computer science side. And as you know, this is an interdisciplinary kind of work. We're trying to do early warnings for soil movements, landslides on landslide sites. So it requires expertise from both sides. Of course, this work is not going to be possible without my team members, our students, Praveen, Priyanka, Ankush, Ishwar, and Chandan, who have the students and staff who have been helping us, being our arms and legs in making this possible. Thank you. So just to start and motivate this problem a little bit, as you know, landslide is particularly a pressing problem, and pressing problem at this time of the year when rainfall is at its peak and we are hearing disasters happening all around because of soil moisture and moisture content infiltrating into the soil. So as not a surprise, landslides are a major disaster. They kill more than 5,000 people on average with a lot of damages in Indian national rupees. India happens to be the landslide capital of the world. Unfortunately, we have a lot of landslide disasters in India and more than 1,000 crores of loss in the economic loss and 200 deaths on average. And this is an average number. It's pulled by the extremes as well. And so the idea is that if we have these landslide disasters happening all around us, causing so much losses, can we do something to predict? Firstly, can we do something to monitor landslides and then predict them and then warn the society about it? And there are some technologies. We've done some literature review. We heard the expert from Mecca Ferry speak just before me. So there are solutions out there, but many of these solutions are costly. So the idea was to come up with a low-cost IoT technology which we can use to monitor, predict, and warn landslides. So this talk is going to be about two things. One is the technology itself, which we need to deploy on hills, like you can see in this picture. This is the famous Quattropi landslide. We have a system somewhere right here. And so we've deployed a system here. And this system communicates with the cloud and sends data to our campus here in Kaman, Himachal Pradesh. And then we can do machine learning, use AI and ML technologies, particularly related to machine learning, deep learning, which can help us go ahead in time and see if we can find some patterns which can allow us to predict movement, predict soil movements ahead of time. So there are two objectives, as I said. One is to present you this low cost, we call it landslide monitoring system, LMS, which can continuously monitor different kinds of slopes. And this is a low cost system, and then transmit the data to the cloud. The second objective is to show you a tip of the iceberg on some of the statistical and deep learning algorithms which we have perfected on our campus here, and we have also published them. So to show you how well or how not so well they do these kinds of predictions. So without delay, I'm going to jump to the first objective, which is the development of the system. And in this, I would like to present you what is out there first to give you an idea where we are. So there are a bunch of technologies available, which include the global positioning systems, the LIDAR-based technologies. We talk about GIS, satellite-based, INSAR-based, remote sensing technologies. But some of these technologies are available, and but these require expertise, and at the same time, they are costly. Of course, data is getting freely available now, particularly from INSAR, but with so much of filtering and so much of corrections being done, and the resolution at a high level, whether these can be used in a complementary manner. But the idea is that for developing countries like India and developing other developing nations of the world which are affected by such economic losses, we need to come up with some low-cost solutions which we can quickly move from one place to another place, deploy them. They are lightweight, and they allow us to get a sense of what is happening on the ground. So our contribution here is to three aspects. One is monitoring, one is prediction, and the other is warning, of course. The idea is monitoring can be done through a low-cost technology, the landslide monitoring system, and this consists of a bunch of sensors which are put in the soil. They may also contain sensors which are weather sensors, and this may also contain things which include the ability to send this sense data to internet or to the cloud, where we can actually catch it at some other remote location for further processing, for machine learning and other things. And then, of course, we also need local alerting in terms of blinkers and filters, which is available, say, on the road where the system is deployed. Beyond, once we get data in the cloud, we can do machine learning, we can do predictions, and prediction itself might require training on certain data sets, then testing the ability of these algorithms on test data set, which is unseen data set, and then further analysis. And then this has a third aspect to it, which is societal, which is, can we warn people about such disasters? And warning can be at different levels, depending upon the problem which the place is having. If there is very frequent movement and movements of large magnitudes, probably this needs a high level alert. Problems where the movement is not that much, probably it's less, the frequency is not that much, moderate. And if it's an occasion, it's a movement which happens seldom, once in a while, of very small nature, then it's low. So the idea is that we can categorize these warnings, and remember that warning is a word which can be triggered when the movement is actually happening, but it can also be triggered based on a predictive movement. Say, what will be the movement tomorrow or next week on a certain day. So warnings can address both the current monitoring as well as from the prediction from the algorithms. So I'm not going to go too much into details. I know there are a lot of flowcharts and things. I'm being a computer science engineer, we love making flowcharts and programs. But not to bore you, the idea is that this, of course, is the brain of our system, which we have perfected. And the most important thing is that it actually monitors movements. It monitors movements, and it actually sleeps most of the time, but it can be woken up. We have this mythological character, Kumkaran. We actually have it, we call the system internally Kumkaran. Right now, I guess version 9 or version 10, where what we do is we keep the system sleeping, but a movement triggers and wakes it up. Of course, the food is the movement here. And then, of course, with the movement, we can communicate wirelessly the warnings. But at the same time, we can actually sense the data from the sensors and communicate it to the cloud. One other aspect of it is that there are a bunch of rain alerts also possible. So if it starts raining, if you are sleeping and water starts falling on your face, you wake up. Similarly, a rain event can also wake the system up. So in nutshell, there is data acquisition happening, data processing happening, data transmission happening, and then of course, cloud integration and other details are there. So what kind of sensors do we use? So we use commercial off-the-shelf sensors available. These are some of the things which are available and which you can buy today. They are also called MEMS-based sensors. Some of these things, like particularly the rain gauge, we have perfected in our lab as well. But the heart of it is an accelerometer, which is a kind of a device which is also available in your smartphones, but a more sensitive accelerometer which can kind of monitor the level of movement we are looking at, like going down to a millimeter or so, or even less. And rain gauge, temperature, relative humidity, barometric pressure. These are weather sensors. We can say ambient light also, because light may affect moisture retention in soil in a certain area if it is in the shadow area. And if it is lighted up regularly, it might actually cause evaporation and might allow the soil to recover from the moisture, or the moisture might get removed from the soil or reduced in the soil. There are some sensors which we use within the soil. Of course, an accelerometer can be embedded in the soil. We can also think of a force sensor, which allows us to measure soil stress, and soil moisture sensor, which allows us to get a sense of what the value of moisture by volume or by weight is in the soil. So here we have a small picture of a system deployed. As you can see, there is a panel there. It's a self-powered system. We cannot rely on grid power in remote areas, particularly disaster-prone areas. And then this box contains sensors. And you see these wires going down. These are the sensors which are going in the soil. And there's a rain gauge as well, which is a tipping bucket rain gauge. So just to give you an idea, we're measuring temperature, barometric pressure, rain, light, soil movement, soil stress or soil force, moisture, and soil temperature as well. So these are the kind of inputs or parameters which we measure. So how the whole thing works. So typically this is how the whole thing works. We have a system which is deployed on a landslide prone site like Kotropi. As you can see, there are tension cracks here. And this system is sending data to a cloud. Of course, the system looks like this, which I showed you in the picture. The system sends data to the cloud. There is also maybe a house or a road nearby where we can actually set up a warning pole. And this warning pole is actually connected to this sensor system remotely through Wi-Fi, or you can say radio frequency. And here, these two communicate. So if there is movement here, this gets activated. And you also have a message sent on a mobile phone through a text message. We did a survey, we found still penetration of smartphones is about 60%, 70%. People still use these button phones, some of them. But SMS is something which can be triggered on all devices, all kinds of. So the least, LCM is least common multiple, or you can say the bottommost technology is a message. So we can alert people using messaging. So moving ahead, we have done these kinds of deployments of the system. This is how the system looks like. This is a Chitavni pole, the kind of pole I was talking to you about. This actually in the background is the Kotropi landslide. And this distance from the landslide to this pole is about, I would say about 600 to 700 meters or more. So it's actually quite large in this case. But there also are cases where this warning pole is right next to the site which is being monitored. Here we are generating movement messages like moderate soil movements or large soil movements, and these messages are coming on the phone in addition to the local warning. So how do we know when to trigger an alert, right? So there the idea is that we can use some statistical understanding. So this is like when the movement is actually happening, how can we alert people, timely alert people when the movement starts to happen, and when to alert and when not to alert. So the idea is that we can quantify different movements to be distributed, say in this case, normally or according to a distribution. And a normal distribution seems to approximate this nicely. And then try to find out how deviant we are from the mean. So what percentile are we talking about? Is it 2 standard deviations away? Is it 3 standard deviations away? How far away it is? And based on that, how far away it is, the more deviant the movement or the amount of movement is, we can generate a stronger alert. There's another method which is also possible. You can see there is a set of messages. This is the system deployed in this Uttarakhand area, Balia Nala. You can see that there are actually messages coming, small alert, small movement, small movement, small movement, small, and then suddenly it becomes moderate, right? So, and you can see this is 56 minutes ago and 1 minute ago. So within a period of time, 1 hour, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 messages have come, and the movement intensity has increased based on the z-score or based on the standard deviation. So this is another indicator that some interesting event is about to happen. There are a lot of movements of increasing magnitude within a short period of time. So this is another algorithm we can use for alerting people. So we have actually, you may say, where do we deploy these systems, right? So if we take the hill as a rigid body, right, like the whole soil mass as a rigid body, if my mouse is a rigid body, if I put the system right on the surface of the mouse, or if I put it inside the mouse, this is a rigid body. So if it's moving with a velocity v, the same is the velocity at the center of mass, same at the velocity on the surface, and same as the velocity if this is the slip surface. So one idea is we can deploy the system on the surface, not very deep in the hill. And if the whole mass moves, it would be the same velocity on the surface approximately. Of course, this soil may not be rigid completely, but there would be some movement coming on the surface. And there is another idea that, so this can be used for alerting, but what is the scientific basis? What's happening inside? Where is the failure plane? Where is the weakness inside the hill? So as to do that, we actually perfected another system where we have flexible PVC casing, and you can see these sensors are all along this PVC casing. And these sensors are basically the accelerometer measuring movement. We have the soil temperature, soil moisture, soil stress, and these 4 or 5 things each sensor node is measuring. And this is put, a hole is dug, we put this pipe inside. And of course, you can do a GPR, this resistivity survey, ground penetrating radar survey, and you can identify some interesting hotspot locations where you want to do that. And this subsurface system can then allow us to actually give us soil movements at different points inside the hill. And then that allows us to see where some sensors above the failure plane are moving, whereas some sensors which are below the failure plane are not moving, allows us to investigate where the failure plane is. So we can get these kinds of cumulative displacement trajectories And we can also plot this. We have a website where we can actually show you in real time on a minute scale, hour scale, or day scale, the different values of the weather parameters, the accelerations, the movements, the force, and the moisture. So just to conclude what I presented right now, it's a subsurface or a surface-based system. The subsurface system can go even 10 to 15 meters deep. This was made right on the campus here. It's Make in India. And the other thing is that it allows us to generate warnings, do measurements. This is something which you can use wherever you want to. It's very portable, lightweight. This whole thing, pole, I can literally take it out and put it somewhere else. It's not very heavy. I can easily carry it in my suitcase. This box is very small. So the other thing is, can we do something now? If we are able to monitor and warn, can we do something about prediction? And what can we do about prediction? I just wanted to check from the anchor how much time I have left with. Can somebody give me an estimate? A minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes?
No, you have more than 10 minutes. Sir.
Okay, cool. Very nice. Thanks. Yeah. So, so the second objective of the study is, if we are able to measure, monitor movement now, can we go ahead in the future to become that, foreteller? What will happen? Can we get an idea of what will happen tomorrow or 1 week from now? So that's where the statistical machine learning, deep learning things come in. And this is the second objective I'm going to show you. Again, see, we have done lots of work. We've trained almost about 30, 40 algorithms in machine learning. With Dr. Uday, we have been working very actively for the last 2-3 years. So the objective of this is just to give you a tip of the iceberg. As you know, very little part of the iceberg is above surface. So just to spark your curiosity, of course, we can have a discussion if you want to know more. So there are essentially in machine learning, of course, world started with statistical inferences. And one of the very familiar models available is the ARIMA model. It basically, the idea is that if something has happened in the past, then can we learn from that to predict the future? And in this situation, what we are learning from the past is the moving average or the move. So if we know the movements in the past and when they occurred, can we use them to predict the future? So the auto-regressive is basically the idea that it's the regression model, but the beta coefficients on the right side, the independent variables are actually time variables. So this is movement at time t+1, given the move we are trying to predict, given the movement at time t-1, and so on, t-2, and so on. And so this is actually being used. Our Chinese counterparts have been very active at different their landslides sites. If you've been very reading about this, the Baijaibo and the Baizmen, that these are some of the very popular landslide locations. Baijaibo is in China, I guess, and they've been doing this. Recently, we found that this Chinese group, Shilu and New and others as well, they started working with recurrent models, which is this long short-term memory models. The ability of these models is that they are able to remember long chain time series. So if you have some long chain time series, we call it long-term dependency, it's able to remember it. Actually, this LSTM, the short form, is basically made up of a cell state, an input gate, a forget gate, and an output gate. So it can forget and remember information. From machine learning is like, wow, we can even forget something and we can remember something more. So anyway, so we've done some literature review and we found that there was availability of ARIMA model. There was availability of LSTM model, but people actually had not really compared the ARIMA with the LSTM models. And also people had not gone and done something new in this area. So we embarked upon this research and we chose a site which is, so of course our sensors, I will also show you data how this algorithm works on our sensors. See, our sensors we started putting 2-3 years back. Of course, data set takes time to build, and some of these deep learning approaches require a lot of data. So the site we have taken is something where Defense Terrain Research Laboratory, DRDO, had set up their sensors, and this is the conventional geotechnical monitoring system using inclinometers. And this had these 5 boreholes. This is the Tangni landslide on this Chamoli, Badrinath, Uttarakhand road. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and each of these boreholes have 5 sensors in them, and each of the sensors had inclinometers at regular depths like 1 meter, 3 meters, 6 meters. So every 3 meters, they had these from 3 to 15 meters in each borehole. So we took this data for the last 3 years, said let's start using this data. This comes from a reliable source, and let's see how well the algorithms can do. So just to give you an idea, inclinometer is nothing but it's basically a tilt meter. It's measuring the angle of the tilt. So if this is the hill and it's tilting this side or that side, it's measuring this angle theta. So what we can do, we can come up with these displacement profile in angle degree over weeks. So what we did, we got week data of about 70 weeks, 72 weeks, and then we tried to find out what is the average tilt weekly, and we get these kind of displacement profiles. And we've taken one sensor which is producing the largest movement, largest average tilt, which is probably closest to the failure plane from each of the 5 boreholes. So you can see borehole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they are different depths as well. And these are the movement profiles. There's some significant event happened in this case, and some event here, and some event here. This guy seems to be all flat. There is no movement. And this, so there are like spot movements. Can we now learn from such kind of things and see how well the model predicts? So just to give you a theory, I said that the SARIMA or ARIMA kind of models learn from the periodicity and learn from the history and data. So idea is we need some amount of training data, we need some amount of test data, we train the model on the training data, and we test the model on the test data. The difference is that during the test, we don't calibrate the parameters of the model, we just run the parameters as is. During training, we trying to find out the best fitting parameters. Fitting means where the model curve comes closest to the actual curve. So there's another model which we actually have developed on our own. We call it this BSLSTM. But this picture looks a little scary, but I'll just explain to you. B stands for bidirectional, and S stands for stacked, and LSTM is the long short-term memory model. So basically, each of these cells is nothing but the LSTM I was talking about, the recurrent network. But there are 2 parts to it. This part is the bidirectional LSTM. So basically, the interesting thing is you can see this input is applied to both the cells, and both the cells give the output. You can see this interesting thing happening. This kind of structure is the bidirectional LSTM. And then we have a stacked LSTM, where these cells are just talking linearly from one side to another side over time. So what we're doing in this model, we're trying to apply time elapsed movement inputs, and we are trying to run this through this model with these parameters, trying to run it through this model, through these parameters, and then finally getting a prediction of the next movement at t+1 and comparing it with the actual movement during training and trying to train the model how it does. So just to come back, just to give you a little more idea as to how this happens, movement can be classified into a vector, which is the movement M borehole week basically is nothing but a label telling you which borehole and which week I'm talking about, and the borehole number and actually the depth of the borehole. So basically we can get this movement for a borehole at a certain depth kind of vector, and we can convert them into packets, so different boreholes, and we can actually either shuffle these packets in a bag or we need not shuffle them. But basically this movement vector always comes. So if it is M11, M12, M13, we're trying to predict M14, which is the next time. So the idea is this whole packet comes with the input and the output. And now you can put them in a bag and you can try putting them into a model and seeing how well the model performs. So we've tried with shuffling, without shuffling, and there are some advantages of doing that, including dropouts and others. I'm not going to go into detail of this, just to give you an idea how we puts the inputs and outputs. So there are a bunch of parameters in the model. both models. The LSTM has the layers, the look back period, epochs, batch size, hidden units, number of neurons, whether shuffling is on or off, whether there is dropout. Dropout means randomly we remove some nodes from the network. Looks very crazy. The idea is that it might produce overfitting. The model does very well in training, but doesn't perform well in the test. And the other side is the classical, our ARIMA or the autoregression model, where we have these look back periods, typically for the moving average term and for the error term. And this differencing is basically the stationary parameter. And then there is the seasonal analogs of those. So we have parameters on both sides. The idea is one is a statistical model and one is a model which has some memory in it, and see how it performs. So we actually trained them, and you can actually see this top table is giving you the training results. This is during training. So what we've done, I've not told you how much we took as training, how much we took as test, but typically the first 80% of the weeks were used as training and the last 20% were used as test. So if the data has 100 weeks, first 80 weeks of training, last 20 weeks of test. And you can see that these numbers are the root mean square errors in degree. It has a unit degree. So the LSTM for different boreholes, we trained it for different boreholes. On average, it only has an error of 0.23 degrees. So we are trying to predict exactly how much movement will there be. It's not about movement or no movement. It's actually how many movement, and it's away from its real value by only 0.23 degrees, less than 1 degree. Okay, and SARIMA model also does relatively well. Now, if you come to the test, we fix the parameters and we run it here. You can see on average, it actually produces 0.27 degrees and 0.33 degrees. So there is very little overfitting because you can see it's performing very well in training and very well in test. And it's performing almost 1/5 or 1/4 of the statistical model. So there is some goodness about this model. Of course, in a paper, we have compared this with a lot of other LSTMs as well and found that this architecture seems to do reasonably well. So these are just the plots. The orange curve shows the actual movement and the dotted line shows the predicted movement. Here it does well. Here probably it is a little delayed by a little bit of delay. Some places it does really well. Some places it does, but on average there is a little deviation of 0.23 degrees. Now we do another exercise. We actually, and these are the best values of the parameters. Typically, one look back period means one last weeks of data is sufficient to predict it, and the same thing where is happening in this case as well. Well, just to show you the BS-LSTM models parameters, and hardly there was dropout required. So what we did also, recently not recently, about a year back, we set up this system in Dharampur on the Kalka-Shimla track. We've been working with Indian Railways. And this movement, this system, this is also a landslide. They've done some GBN. My colleague Uday would know more about this. And you can see reinforcements are also cracking, whether because of weight or because of movement. There is a highway going on the top, and this whole thing is actually sliding. So anyway, so this is the system. You can see the sensor node, and we got this kind of movement profile. And there was an event on the 120th day, 3 months after installing the system. So you can see we took this model as is, the BS-LSTM model, and we actually ran it. And you can see that the dotted line is superimposed on the orange line. Of course, I don't believe this result, but it's actually predicting right on spot. Just to show you something. So I'll just conclude by saying that we started with the Stangni landslide data. We've calibrated LSTM, in this case, the BS-LSTM model is slightly more interesting architecture. And we found that it seems to perform relatively well in training and test. We've also compared this with the classical models like SARIMA, because our colleagues in the literature have been using such models. And we found it performs relatively better, 1/4 or 1/3 of that. The error is much less. And so we can actually ensemble such models and we can create more sophisticated architecture, and they can be used to forecast real world, like I showed you Dharampur data. Of course, I didn't tell you too much about it, but the idea is to give you just a snapshot. So what is in future? There are a bunch of things we can do in future. See, we've been going weekly, we can go hourly, we can deploy this at a number of locations in different parts of the country, the monitoring system. And of course, we can plug in the BSLSTM and see how it predicts movement and gives an indicator of where the movements are likely to happen ahead of time and see how well it performs in the real world. One other interesting thing is that right now we have multivariate data available with us. We have rainfall, we have light, we have temperature, relative humidity, soil temperature. We started with univariate data, movement, predicting movement. We should actually bring in these parameters. We started doing this already. So how does a multivariate idea, when you have other predictors in such models, allows us to make more, so in a SERIMA model, bringing it as an exogenous variable, or in an LSTM model, making that packet richer, just not movement, but there are a bunch of other attributes which allows us to predict movement better. So these are some of the ideas of future work. I'd like to thank my colleague, Dr. Uday, the organizers of this event, the anchor in the call, and thank you for patiently listening. I'll take your questions.
Thank you very much, sir, for your wonderful presentation and for your achievement in the landslide early warning system. Monitoring landslide or slope prone to is a crucial element for landslide risk reduction and resilience. Sir, there are many questions, but due to time constraint, we will take a couple of questions. This question is from Mr. Ramasamy. How to decide the number of sensors required for the site, and how long data will be required for machine learning purpose, how to train the program with data set, and are the sensors not connected to data logger with wires, or even they are wireless?
Wow, a lot of interesting questions. I'll just quickly give you one-line answers. It's not easy to decide how many sensors. What it requires is we need to go to the site, we need to investigate, we need a person like Uday or a soil specialist or a rock specialist to see which thing will fail. We need to look for telltale signs of tension cracks and then decide. So it's not like in Kotropi, it's a 200-meter long landslide. We need to put sensor at every meter. We need to identify. So the range of typically sensors would be about 15 meters around the location where it is put, but we don't put multiple sensors. Even at Kotropi, we didn't go beyond 2 because we identified 2 sites which might fail in the next round. So this is the answer to the first question. The second question, Anil, I think, was referring to can you just remind me, was referring to the system. Can you go back and just tell me?
How long data will be required for machine learning purpose? How to train the program with data set?
Yes, so the more the merrier. We actually found that more data, particularly, see, it doesn't matter to the statistical models. You can even classical machine learning models can be trained on even very little data. You have said 3 weeks or 4 weeks of data, you can derive a model. But the question is, when we start talking about recurrent models, deep learning models, they need multiple data points. So this particularly this Dharampur Kumarhatti data set I was showing you has about this data is being logged every 10 minutes over 1 year or so. So there are a lot of about thousands of data points. So this actually really made the model perform very well. Yeah. What's the other question, Anil? Was related to the
are the sensors not connected? Yeah. Not connected to data logger or even they are wireless.
Yeah, so the sensors, that's a good question. So we actually wire connect the sensors to the data logger in this case, if you mean the microcontroller. And there is a reason for it. If we have wireless sensors, then they will again need power. And again, of course, there are ideas to give them power, putting a small solar panel or a smaller chip there. And also there may be some noise because of communication loss. So here we have used wired sensors. The system is wired, and the length of the wire can go, as I showed you, in the subsurface deployment, we have gone almost 15 meters, 15. There are ways of even go beyond that. We can discuss that if you're interested. Any other question, Anil?
Yes, sir. This question is from Mr. Murli, and his question is, can we accurately predict landslide as when and where it will happen by computer-based modeling and early warning could be given?
Yeah. So I've been very careful in saying that I'm modeling soil movements. I showed one slide where the soil movements became rapid. The messages within 1 hour, there were 6 messages and increasing in intensity. This is a pattern which may be, so the velocity of the messages is increasing and the magnitude of movement is increasing. This is an indicator of a landslide. So I would say that the systems that we have deployed, we have had 2 or 3 cases where actually a landslide took place, but we need more such cases to actually train the algorithm on recognizing the signature of a landslide. But definitely frequent movements of increasing magnitude is a cause of concern. And when that happens, in particularly Mandi district, where we have set up these systems, the police gets messages and they call us and we say, please stop the traffic because there may be something going to happen. We have had cases in close to Pando Dam where we warned the district commissioner in the morning, and by afternoon or by noon, there was actually a slide. So we've had such cases. I would say I'm not predicting landslide yet. I'm predicting soil movements, but these soil movements can culminate to a large landslide. But this is actually in a few years, probably we can get there. Yeah.
So thank you very much, sir. That's all for question and answer session. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to all the organizers. Anil, thank you for hosting. It's a pleasure. I'll stop my screen sharing.
Yes, sir. So with this, we move forward for the validity session. And for validity session, we have Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division and IDM, and Dr. K.V. Uday, IIT Mandi. Now I hand over the mic to Dr. K. Uday, Assistant Professor, IIT Mandi, for his concluding remarks. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Anil, for this opportunity. And of course, I think I think all of us has really enjoyed the talks also today and the third day, continuously from the last few days. So quickly to give you an idea about what we have actually gone through or what we have actually understood from this particular webinar, which went for 3 days, starting from 28th, that is on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Today is the last day, ending day. So we had typically 7 sessions where we had 7 experts. We have carefully chosen the experts in such a way that we had a coverage from industry, from academics, and definitely into administration as well. So when we see the presentation which was given by Dr. Bhandari sir, so he was really fascinated us with a lot of information, whatever he has presented in his presentation. I think, as he told, if you remember his presentation, it still moves in front of my eyes when I say that he sorted each and every problem, and then he has also given us an idea how to move ahead of this particular problem, or what can be the way we can cross this particular limit, whatever we have been facing. So I think that was a wonderful presentation. If somebody, as I told again, if somebody has made a note on this particular presentation, I'm sure they'll be having wonderful opportunities in front of them when they're talking, or when they're talking about these particular areas, especially in the line of investigation, materials, and the type of flows and the conditions which happen in the soil. In the next presentation, we had again a very good presentation, informative presentation from Dr. Nilima Satyam, who has given us again an idea about 2 things, mostly on the sensing side of it, when she talked about the use of MEMS field sensors which can be used, and how these particular sensors and the data which we are getting over the time from the particular location. For example, the last talk also from Dr. Varun. So we have seen that there is a importance on understanding the threshold of these particular values which we are getting to understand whether there is a chance of happening of a landslide or not. So it's understood typically to the end when we say that we need to alert, or we need to early warn the people or the public or the stakeholders on the happening of a landslide. It's very important to get into these thresholds. If we are giving more false alarms, then these particular methods or these particular systems will start will be taken lightly, or it will not be taken seriously in order to avoid any problem which may have been should be coming further. So for this, the amount of presentation given by Dr. Nilima as well as Dr. Varun to the end gave us a very good idea on how this thresholding can be developed and how this by using statistical methods or by using machine learning or artificial intelligence, which was given again by both of them very clearly. And apart from this, we had two presentations from the experts from industry. Yesterday, Mr. Ashish, and today we had Dr. Mahajan, Ratnakar Mahajan. So again, they also have given a very good idea on one was profile, one was mostly looking into investigation, how to look into the problems, what type of methods we have for investigations by Mr. Ashish Garpur yesterday. So he talked about every most possible investigation methods we have in landslides, including drone to subsurface methods by using GPR or electrical potential methods. So I think these have given us a very good idea on how to go to the site and what are the various options we have to take back. And today, Dr. Nagar Mahajan has given again a different scope where we discussed about different types of methods, what we have, and how each of this particular method can be chosen when we talk about flexible type of systems, or we talk about how a particular site should be characterized before going to a particular analysis, including the design part of it. He has tried to cover from his particular presentation. We thank really these two experts for giving us this opportunity of looking into. Then definitely two important points which again come for the next further presentation. One yesterday by Dr. Sarada Pradhan, who talked about the geological aspects, how the geology plays more important role, and how when we talk about the integration between the geotechnical and geological engineers, how these two should be coming in phase to each other to understand this multifaceted problem that is our landslides. And definitely to the end, to yesterday the opening talk given by Dr. Surya Prakash, it is one of the application oriented presentation in the whole series of webinar, where he talked about how when we are having a particular site of landslide, how can we say that this particular landslide has a impact on our building construction or our site investigation, site identification, and also where and where not to go, and what are the various options we have when we are talking about going for any infrastructure development or any activities in especially hilly areas. And he also covered a lot of information on how these particular information or data can be used to understand possibilities of happening of a landslides further, and thereby what should be our plan and what should be our approach towards looking into construction in these particular areas. I think we had a really brainstorming session, and definitely the thanks to all the participants for their questions. Yesterday, I spent a little of time to look into the questions and try to answer in the sessions. I don't know if you could receive the answers. I'm not very sure, but I tried to answer most of the questions. Today, I could not do this because of again getting involved in the presentations to the end. So we had a very good audience session. I think in the first day we had more than 400 attendees, and to the end of the day we have more than 250. It's a weekday, and I am sure a lot of them are taking time and interest in discussing, chatting, as well as asking questions in most of the points. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity which has been given by NIDM, and IIT Mandi has cashed in to getting the speakers in order to get this particular webinar into the phase. So so this is all from my side. Anil, if I missed something.
No, sir. Thank you very much for providing a brief summary of all the technical sessions. Thank you very much, sir. Now for validity address, I hand over the mic to Professor Surya Prakash. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Anilji. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. And first of all, my biggest thanks to IIT Mandi, particularly Dr. Uday, who has very well coordinated the whole program along with the NIDM faculty members. And the program actually achieved a good success in terms of participation. A very large number of participants have actually involved themselves into the program, and also actively interactive also, because they had asked some questions, as he told that he had also tried to answer many of those questions. And the speakers were also all very outstanding in terms of their rich knowledge, experience, information, particularly both from the field as well as in the theoretical aspects. And from our sides, we had also tried to deal with the administrative, legal, and social perspectives. So overall, we have tried to achieve all the aspects which were required for an ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction and a healthy environment for promoting safe hill area development, following the disaster-resistant technologies and infrastructure techniques. And I hope these lessons which have been learned from this 3 days training program will be taken up by particularly the field agencies, functionaries, practitioners, and professionals to the grassroots level for implementation purposes, so that the real benefits by the people can be achieved or accrued. I must thank on behalf of NIDM all the endeavors which have been made. And this is our first initiative after we have actually signed an MOU with the IIT Mandi. We are transferring that and we'll have a ceremonial occasion also. But because of the COVID-19 situation, this has been done online so far. But this is the first program after the signing of that MOU, and the success of this first program is attributed to both the institutions for their contribution. And I'm also thankful to the director IIT Mandi, and also the dean Dr. Venkatji and Dr. Varun, and also all the speakers who had actually spared their valuable time. And also I'm thankful to our executive director Major General Manoj Kumar Bindal. He has given us a free hand to conduct such programs and also take up all kind of potential activities for the webinars, conferences, workshops, and training programs. And we are happy that we have partnered with IIT Mandi for much larger scope of joint activities or collaborative activities, which is also mandated as part of our local and national strategies to enhance collaborations under Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, which were declared from 14th to 18th of March 2015 at Sendai in Japan. And we are trying to follow and do more. The early warning systems which have been discussed by IIT Mandi are really encouraging by showing their good results in different places. And we hope they will ultimately become very affordable, reliable, and credible early warning systems, and it will help the society at large. And also the investigation parts have also been well dealt with. Dr. R.K. Bhandari, who is a pioneer in this field, had actually shared his concerns basically because he had witnessed the studies and actions being taken on landslides in the country for almost more than 4 decades now. He's the one who actually started working on landslides in early 60s, and it's almost going to be 6 decades that he would be completing in this area. So his inputs and his concerns were very, very important. And I hope the current generation who is working on landslides will surely follow the footsteps that he had mentioned, and will try to achieve the goal for disaster risk reduction that we have is zero casualty mission. Now this has been very well raised in the parliament. Also that the landslides, flash floods, and cloudbursts are the increasing, and are their impacts increasing, and how can we control or manage that? So from the highest level, we are likely to receive most of the support, and let's work to the best possible extents from our sides, and join hands together to make our country disaster free and resilient. I wish all the best to all the participants, and also our resource persons, experts, and our partners, and our team. who are working hard to achieve this goal. With these words, I thank each and everyone for making this program successful. I wish all the best, and I hope we will continue this journey towards disaster risk reduction and resilience. As Vivekanand ji has said, stop not till the goal is achieved. So we must continue these efforts till the goals are not fully achieved. Thank you very much. Anil ji, back to you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your address. So with this, we draw the curtain of this three days online training program on comprehensive landslide risk management. That was jointly organized by National Institute of Disaster Management and Indian Institute of Technology, Mandi. But before that, I would privilege to propose vote of thanks. And at the outset, I want to extend my generous thanks to our inaugural session dignitaries, Dr. R.K. Bhandari, who is Subhash Chandra Bose Aapda Prabandhan Awardee, and also Varnish, he has a recipient of Varnish Medal, and Dr. Venkat Krishnan, Dean from IIT Mandi, Professor Surya Prakash, Head GMR Division and IDM, for gracing the inaugural session and for their insightful revelation which set the context of this event. Also, I must mention a deep sense of appreciation to our distinguished speakers, Dr. R.K. Bhandari, Professor Nilima Satyam from IIT Indore, Professor Surya Prakash from NIDM, Professor Mr. Ashish Gharpure from Genstru Consultants Private Limited, Professor S.P. Pradhan from IIT Roorkee, and Dr. Ratnakar Mahajan from McAfee, and Dr. Varun from IIT Mandi for their wonderful presentation and for sparing their valuable time and providing us opportunity to gain from their respective knowledge and from their experience and expertise. I also take this opportunity to thank all the participants for their active participation throughout the training. And I also express my gratitude towards Executive Director NIDM and Director IIT Mandi for their continuous support, guidance, and which have greatly helped towards the successful organization of this training program. And I would also like to thank Dr. K.V. Uday from IIT Mandi for arranging such eminent experts for the event, and also would like to thank my GMRD team, Dr. Harjeet Kaur, Dr. Raju Thapa, and others, and as well as IT team of IIT Mandi and IDM for providing continuous support in organizing this training program. And just to inform our participant, an IDM published a biannual journal titled Disaster and Development, and this time NIDM will be publishing a special issue of its journal on geohazards. So I request all the researchers, all the participants, and that whoever is interested can send their original work, and all the details regarding the journal is available on our website. You can check all the necessary guidelines for the journals. So I will conclude my vote of thanks with a request to our participants to kindly follow the precautionary measures for the COVID-19. Wear mask, follow physical distancing, maintain hand hygiene, and beside taking the vaccine. So once again, thank you all for joining us.
Just to conclude, Mr. Anil, I have a point. So I think most of the participants are asking for some video and all this PDFs or presentations. I think the video should be available from NIDM side. Or what is
we will upload in our YouTube channel and after all the editing and.
Okay, perfect. I think the attendees can take this, that all the video lectures should be available in the YouTube channel after the clarification from the NIDM side. So you need to wait a little on this. Thank you. Thank you, Anil. I think we can close the session.
Sure, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Prakash.
Thank you.
Thank you, Varun. Bye-bye.